My name is Emma. I am 32 years old. I live in a small town in Ohio, in the United States. I work at a local school as a cleaner. My daughter's name is Mia. She is 6 years old. I was married to Tom for 8 years. When I met Tom, I was only 23. He had a big smile and kind eyes. He worked at a car repair shop. He made jokes. He made me laugh. I thought, he is the one. We got married after 1 year. At the beginning, it felt like a dream. We lived in a small house. We didn't have much, but we were happy. We watched movies on the couch. We shared one blanket. We danced in the kitchen on rainy days. Then Mia was born. She was small and soft, with brown eyes just like Tom. The first time Tom held her, he cried. "She's perfect," he said. I believed him, but things started to change. Tom worked longer hours. He came home late. He didn't smile much. He said he was tired. He didn't hold Mia anymore. He didn't talk to me like before. One night, I made his favorite dinner, chicken and mashed potatoes. When he came home, I said, "I made this for you." He looked at the food and said, "I already ate." I felt something heavy in my heart. I sat down. I didn't eat either. The next week I asked, "Do you want to go for a walk with Mia?" He said, "You go. I need rest." Mia looked at him and said, "Daddy, come too." He didn't even answer. Mia took my hand. We went alone. Sometimes I heard him talking on the phone in the bathroom. His voice was soft. It was not how he talked to me anymore. When I asked, "Who were you talking to?" he said, "Just a friend." But I knew. One morning, I saw a message on his phone. It said, "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again." My hands were cold. My heart beat fast. I didn't know what to say. He came out of the shower. I looked at him and said, "Who is she?" He didn't answer. I asked again, "Tom, who is she?" He said, "Don't make a scene." I said, "I saw the message." He looked at me and said, "It's not what you think." But it was. I could feel it in my bones. That night, he didn't come home. I told Mia, "Daddy is working late." She said, "Okay, Mommy," and hugged me. I cried in the kitchen after she went to bed. I cried so quietly I could hear the clock ticking. 2 days later, Tom came back. He looked tired. I asked, "Where were you?" He said, "I needed space." I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, but I didn't. I just said, "Are you coming back home now?" He said, "I don't know." He left again the next day. Mia asked, "Where's Daddy?" I said, "He is busy." She looked sad. She hugged her teddy bear and said, "I miss him." I smiled and said, "Me too." But inside, I felt like something was breaking. The days were quiet after that. I went to work. I came home. I helped Mia with her school. I cooked. I cleaned. I waited. One Saturday morning, I heard a knock on the door. I opened it. It was Tom. He said, "I'm taking my things." I said, "You're leaving?" He said, It's better this way. I felt like the floor was moving. I wanted to fall. I asked, "Is there someone else?" He looked away and said nothing. That was my answer. I watched him pack his clothes. Mia stood in the hallway as she said, "Daddy?" He looked at her and said, "Daddy has to go." She ran to me and held my leg. I held her close. When he closed the door behind him, the house felt colder. I sat on the floor and cried. Mia sat next to me. She touched my face and said, "Don't cry, Mommy." I held her and said, "I'm trying not to." She kissed my cheek and said, "I'll take care of you." That night, I didn't sleep much. I looked at the empty space in the bed. I looked at the pictures on the wall. I saw the wedding photo. I saw the family photo from the zoo. I took them down. The next morning, I made breakfast. Mia helped me crack the eggs. She dropped one, and it broke on the floor. We both laughed. It was the first laugh in days. After breakfast, we went for a walk. The sky was blue. Mia picked a yellow flower and gave it to me. "This is for you," she said. I said, "Thank you, my little sunshine." She smiled. I looked at her and thought, I still have love. I still have something beautiful. At night, I read her a story. She fell asleep holding my hand. I stayed in bed next to her. I watched her breathe. I whispered, "You're the reason I can keep going." The next few weeks were hard. I felt tired all the time. People at work asked, "Are you okay?" I just said, "I'm fine." But I wasn't. Bills were hard to pay. I had to call the electric company to ask for more time. I felt ashamed. I looked at the numbers again and again, but there wasn't enough. One day I cried in the bathroom at work. I didn't want anyone to see, but that night, Mia gave me a drawing. It showed me and her holding hands, standing under a big sun. She wrote, "Me and Mommy, I love you." I cried again, but it was different this time. I felt something inside me say, "You can do this." For her. I started to wake up early. I made lunches with notes inside. "Have a happy day, love, Mommy," I sang while cooking. I danced in the kitchen again, just a little. Mia laughed and said, "Mommy, you're silly." I smiled and said, "I missed being silly." Some nights were still hard. Some nights I still cried. But Mia always held my hand in her sleep, and little by little, I began to feel hope again. Before I share the rest of my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? Sometimes I wonder if someone out there truly hears me, someone who understands what I'm feeling. It gives me strength to know I'm not alone. So please, tell me in the comments. One evening, Mia was drawing on the floor. I sat at the table with a cup of tea. The room was quiet. I looked at her and said, "Mia, how was school today?" She smiled and said, "I got a gold star for reading." I clapped my hands. "That's wonderful!" She got up and ran to me. "I want to read to you, Mommy." She sat on my lap and opened her book. Her small voice filled the room. I closed my eyes and listened. I felt warm inside. After she finished, she looked up and said, "Did I read good?" I said, "You read perfectly." She hugged me tight. That night, I sat alone after she went to sleep. I thought about the future. I knew I had to be strong, not just for her, but for myself too. The next morning, I spoke to my boss. Her name was Linda. I said, "Do you have more hours for me? I need extra work." She looked at me kindly and said, "Let me see what I can do." 2 days later, she gave me 3 more hours a week. It wasn't much, but it helped. Mia and I made a chart at home. We called it Happy Things. Every evening we wrote one thing that made us smile. One day she wrote, "Mommy made pancakes." Another day, "We saw a rainbow." I wrote, "Mia gave me a hug before work." Our little wall filled with paper hearts and stars. It made the room feel full of light. One Saturday, we went to the park. Mia ran to the swings. I sat on a bench. A woman next to me said, "Is that your daughter?" I said, "Yes." She smiled. "She's full of joy." I smiled too. "She keeps me going." The woman said her name was Anna. She worked at the library. She told me they had a reading club for kids. "Would Mia like to join?" she asked. I said, "Yes." She would love that. The next week, I took Mia to the library. She was shy at first, but soon she was reading with 2 other girls. They laughed and pointed at the pictures in the books. Anna walked over and said, "You can sit with the other moms if you like." I said, "Okay." There were 3 other women. They were kind. They asked about Mia, about my work, and even invited me for coffee next time. That night, Mia said, "I made new friends." I said, "So did I." We both smiled, but not all days were good. One evening, Tom called. I looked at the phone. My hands felt cold. I picked up. "Hello?" He said, "How's Mia?" I said, "She's fine." He said, "I want to see her." I didn't know what to say. I asked, "Why now?" He said, "I miss her." I stayed quiet. Then I said, "She's happy. Please don't hurt her again." He said, "I won't." We met at the park. Tom looked tired. He brought a small teddy bear. Mia ran to me and said, "Is Daddy coming today?" I said, "Yes." She looked surprised. When Tom came, she looked at him and said, "Where have you been?" He sat down and said, "I'm sorry, Mia." She didn't smile. She took the teddy bear and held it, but didn't hug him. She said, "Mommy makes me pancakes. Do you?" He didn't answer. After 20 minutes, she came to me and said, "Can we go now?" I said, "Yes." Tom watched us walk away. He didn't say anything. Later that night, Mia asked, "Is Daddy staying now?" I said, "I don't know." She looked at me and said, "It's okay, Mommy. I have you." I kissed her forehead and whispered, "And I have you." Some nights I still felt pain. I still remembered the day he walked out. I still remembered how small I felt. But those memories didn't hurt as much now. I started saving money. A little each week. I kept the coins in a glass jar. Mia wrote on it with a sticker, "Mommy's dream." I didn't know what the dream was yet, but I smiled every time I dropped a coin inside. At work, Linda said, "You've been doing a great job, Emma." There's a part-time spot in the front office. Would you like to try? I said, Me? Really? She said, Yes. You're kind. You're careful. I believe in you. I almost cried, and I said, Thank you. I will do my best. The office work was different. I answered phones, gave out visitor passes, and helped the kids when they lost their jackets or forgot their lunch. It felt good to do something new. I told Mia about it. She said, Are you still cleaning? I said, Not as much now. I help in the front. She clapped her hands and said, You're moving up, Mommy. That weekend, we baked cookies together. The kitchen was full of flour and laughter. We burned one tray, but we didn't care. We sat on the floor, eating warm cookies, and Mia said, This is the best day ever. I smiled. Mine too. One night, I looked at old pictures on my phone. There were many with Tom. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I felt done. I deleted them. I kept only the ones with Mia. I looked at our new photos, her on the swing, me holding her hand, her first library day, the drawings she made of us. That was my real life now. One morning, I opened my journal and wrote, I am proud of myself. I didn't think I'd ever write those words, but I did. I even wrote it twice. 3 months passed. Mia's hair grew longer. She asked me to braid it every morning. I was not very good at it, but she said, It looks perfect, Mommy. Each time my heart felt full. One day as we walked to school, she said, I want to be like you when I grow up. I smiled. Why? She said, Because you're brave. I didn't know what to say. I looked at her little face and whispered, You're the reason I try. That day at work, I thought about her words. You're brave. Was I? I had cried many nights. I had felt broken. I had wanted to give up, but I didn't. I kept going. For Mia. And now, also for me. Tom still called sometimes. He wanted to see Mia more. I said, If you want to see her, be better. He asked, Better how? I said, Be there. Not just for 1 hour. Not just with gifts. Be there when she's tired. When she's sick. When she wants to talk. He said, I don't know how. I said, Then learn. She's worth it. He stayed quiet. Then he said, You've changed. I said, Yes. I had to. Later that evening, I told Mia, Daddy might come this weekend. She looked at me and asked, Do you think he'll stay this time? I said, I don't know, baby. She said, That's okay. I still have you. I hugged her tight. That weekend, Tom came to pick her up. He brought coloring books and snacks. Mia went with him. I watched from the window as they walked to his car. I felt nervous. I felt scared. But when she came back in the evening, she was smiling. She said, We went to the zoo. I said, Really? She nodded and said, He even made silly animal sounds. We both laughed. I was glad she had fun. I didn't know how long it would last, but for now, she was happy. That was enough. That night she said, You should open your dream shop, Mommy. I smiled. One day, she said, what would you sell? I said, books, coffee, and maybe cookies. She said, can I help? I said, you can be the boss. She laughed. No, you're the boss. We both giggled. A week later, Linda at work gave me a small envelope. She said, this is for you. I opened it. Inside was a card. It said, you are doing amazing. And there was a $50 gift card for a local cafe. I looked at her with wide eyes. She said, you inspire people more than you know. I felt tears in my eyes. That weekend, Mia and I went to that cafe. It was small and warm. There were books on the shelves and soft music playing. Mia looked around and said, it feels like your dream. I nodded. We shared a sandwich and hot chocolate. She looked at me and said, I want to come here every week. I said, me too. When we got home, I pulled out the glass jar. It was almost full now. I looked at Mia and said, maybe we can start our own tiny coffee corner at home. She jumped up. Yes! We cleaned a small table in the living room. We put 2 cups, her toy cash register, and some of her storybooks on the shelf. She made a sign that said, Mia and Mommy's Cafe. That night, we opened our cafe. She took my order and made coffee with water and a toy spoon. I laughed so much that my cheeks hurt. We sat down with real cookies and said, cheers! She said, this is the best cafe ever. I said, because you're here. The next day, I bought a notebook. On the first page, I wrote, my dream is real, even in small steps. I started writing more. Small goals, simple plans, drawings of what our real cafe could look like one day. I showed it to Mia. She clapped and said, you're doing it. I said, we're doing it. One evening, I got a message from Tom. He wrote, thank you for being strong. I see now what I lost. I didn't reply. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt peaceful. That night, as I lay in bed, Mia slept beside me, holding my hand. I whispered, thank you, my sweet girl. You gave me back my heart. She didn't hear me, but maybe her heart did. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. More emotional and inspiring stories are coming soon.